Proceedings are resumed. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I recognize the Honorable Attorney General if he wishes to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I I certainly wish to thank all honourable members for their tacit support. I am aware, Madam Speaker, that some members have some observations. I won't put it in their head and observations about whether or not they were ready to debate this bill. I'm certainly sorry about that. But the fact is that the bill has been around for a while. And hopefully there will be an opportunity in committee if members have observations. They can be ventilated and we can listen to those. So I certainly thank the honourable members for their support, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Data Protection Bill 2016 be given a second reading. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against, no.
No.
I believe the ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, can we have a division?
Did you speak against it?
Madam Clerk, please call a division.
Honourable Aldo McLaughlin.
Aye.
Honourable Moses Kirkconnell. Honourable Kurt Tibbetts. Honourable Osmond Bowden. Honourable Wayne Panton.
Aye.
Honourable Marco Archer.
Aye.
Honourable Tara Rivers.
Aye.
Mr. Roy McTaggart.
Aye.
Mr. Joseph Hugh.
Aye.
Honourable McKeeva Bush. Mr. Borney Bush. Captain Eugene Ebanks. Mr. Alva Sakou.
No.
Mr. Winston Connolly.
No.
Mr. Ezra Miller. No. Mr. Arden McLean.
No.
Honourable Anthony Eden.
Mr. McLean, I thought you said you were going to. Mr. McLean? I thought you said you were going to give conditional support. Mislead me again.
Of the division are as follows: 8 ayes, 4 noes, and 5 absentees. The motion is carried for the second reading.
The Prescription Amendment Bill 2017.
I recognize the Honourable Minister responsible for infrastructure.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of a bill entitled the Prescription Amendment Bill 2017.
The bill has been duly moved. Does the Honourable Minister, mover of the bill, wish to speak thereto?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Thank you. Madam Speaker, if you would just give me 2 minutes, please. Madam Speaker, I beg your forgiveness, but there were a lot of black folders and they all looked alike. But we found the right one. Thank you. Madam Speaker, this bill is a bill which the government considers very necessary to bring, and it is brought alongside the Public Lands Bill, which will be next on the order paper. Madam Speaker, we have a problem here that I would want to say has plagued us for a very long time. The bill that I am introducing seeks to amend the prescription law to enable a government agency or entity to bring claims to the Grand Court on behalf of the general public in order to have a dispute settled regarding access to a public beach. The public's access to the beach, Madam Speaker, is a subject of regular debate here in the Cayman Islands. And I believe that it is safe comment to say each and every one of us in this chamber will have experienced how this can provoke very strong opinions from individuals and groups alike. Public rights of access to the beach fall into different types. They may be formal, Madam Speaker, that is, being registered on the registry map. These have been registered at cadastral or have been voluntarily registered as what is termed a dedication. Some are public rights of way to the beach that are created through legislation. For instance, Regulation 32 of the Development and Planning Regs requires the CPA, that is the Central Planning Authority, to require a landowner seeking planning consent in a hotel tourism planning zone to set aside and dedicate to the public a right of beach access from the public road to the sea of at least 6 feet in width per 200 feet of shoreline. However, Madam Speaker, certain beach access rights are unregistered, having been established through regular use by members of the public over many years. These are termed prescriptive rights. Section 4, subsection 1 of the Prescription Law 97 revision provides for the effect of 20 years use by the public of a beach and of means of access thereto. When any beach has been used by the public or any class of the public for fishing, for purposes incident to fishing, or for bathing or recreation, and any road, track, or pathway passing over any land adjoining or adjacent to such beach has been used by the public or any class of the public as a means of access to such beach without interruption for 20 years, the public shall, subject to the provisos hereinafter contained, have the absolute and indefeasible right to use such beach, land, road, track, or pathway, unless it appears that the same was enjoyed by some consent or agreement expressly made or given for that purpose by deed of writing. Now, Madam Speaker, under Section 9 of the same law, where the public or any class of the public has used any beach, land, road, track, or pathway in the manner specified under Section 4, subsection 1, and such use is disputed, any person concerned in the dispute may lodge a plaint in the Grand Court under the judicature law. So, Madam Speaker, what that is saying in lay terms is any member of the public who has a dispute with either a landowner or someone else saying they do not have the right to use that right of way has to go to the Grand Court to lodge a plaint to be able to seek redress. So, for practical purposes, the prescription law has been rarely, if ever, used to protect historic unregistered public beach access. This law does not allow privately owned land to be fettered with registered public rights of access without the landowner's consent or without the backing of a judgment from the Grand Court. Having said that, the government legal department has advised, and your good self and other members, Madam Speaker, will remember that I read that memo, which was from a former Crown, the late Stephen Hall Jones, former senior Crown Counsel, as he proffered that opinion, that legal opinion. I think it was in 2003. So that advice is that the government themselves, as the law stands now, cannot lodge a plaint in the Grand Court on behalf of the public. The advice is it a writ? I am told by my learned counsel that I shouldn't use the word plaint, and I understand absolutely why I should say the writ. So if I say plaint again, please correct me, Madam Speaker. Thank you. So, the government legal department, in their advice, as I was saying, has said that as the law stands now, the government cannot lodge a writ on behalf of the public in the Grand Court. So, the advice suggests that a writ can be lodged by a member of the public or members of the public forming a group or association, or, Madam Speaker, for the government to fund such an action by the individual or group. Madam Speaker, historically, the high cost of lodging a writ in the Grand Court and following this through is a significant undertaking and a deterrent to an individual or a group, considering that the beneficiary is the general public. The bill that I am now putting forward to this House, Madam Speaker, is simply an amendment to Section 9 of the prescription law. This amendment, Madam Speaker, will enable the Cayman Islands government to initiate and lodge writs in the Grand Court on behalf of the public in order to seek judgments on disputed public beach access rights. I believe, Madam Speaker, that this is long overdue. And just so that you will know, just so that everyone will know, Madam Speaker, until I saw that legal opinion given by the late Stephen Hall Jones, I, for one, did not know that that's what obtained. That's what made me understand why there has been all of this kerfuffle over the years and the fact that nothing has been done to right it. So, as I said, I believe it is long overdue. As all of us have been around long enough to know of the many struggles that people have had to have such rights recognized. The bill that is before us specifically speaks to, and I want to paraphrase, a statutory authority, department of government, or agency charged with responsibility for ensuring access to public beaches to make an application under the law to have a dispute settled regarding access to a public beach. So, Madam Speaker, that's basically the objective of the amending bill. It is our intention that on the passage of this legislation, action will immediately be taken to commence the process to register all public beach access rights that can be proven to exist as prescriptive rights. To go back into history once again, 2003, Madam Speaker, Lands and Survey prepared a report identifying all beach access points along specific section of the Grand Cayman coastline. Last year, the group known as the Concerned Citizens solicited this government's assistance in recognizing this report. Here again, Madam Speaker, until I was given a copy of this report by the Concerned Citizens, I did not know of its existence. Nevertheless, we now know both of the legal opinion and of the existence of this 2003 report. So what they did, that is the Concerned Citizens, they effectively requested that we recognize these accesses. So I then instructed my ministry to have this report, which is commonly referred to as the Grant Vincent Report, comprehensively updated. All beach access points, both registered and unregistered, as we speak, Madam Speaker, are being identified, inspected, and recorded around the entire 3 Cayman Islands. This report, I was told this afternoon, will be released to the ministry before the end of the month, before the end of March. Basically, they have said to me that they have finished all of the site visits. They are now completing all of the paperwork, and they will have the report finalized and be able for anyone to really have access by the end of the month. This will also include a survey of the coastlines of Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Madam Speaker, this report will then form a database for ensuring that all registered public rights-of-way to the sea are signposted and maintained fit for purpose. The report, Madam Speaker, will also identify the unregistered beach access points. And from this, the government can then commence the action to ultimately register those that can be proven to exist as prescriptive rights. Prescriptive rights, as defined in the law, speaks to 20 years of use regularly by the public. So that is where affidavits and such the like will come in. The concerned citizens have also provided lands and survey from quite a while back. Again, something which was new to me until I discovered it some months ago. Over 500 affidavits from the 2003 report. So now there are the other ones that will have been identified by the update to be dealt with. So, Madam Speaker, once we can have safe passage of this bill, we will also be speaking to the Public Lands Bill, which not quite as companion legislation, but in some respects, the Public Lands Bill is companion legislation because that will provide some teeth to effectively ensure that the public has access to these rights of way. It will also make clear determination of proper signage, upkeep, and all of the other aspects of it to make sure that businesses are not using these rights of way to operate and block use by the public and all of those things that we hear about today. So, Madam Speaker, I'm sure that the House can see the importance and the correlation of all two pieces of legislation. And before I close I'll wait for that with the wind up. Madam Speaker, in closing, I'd just like to say it would be remiss of me if I were not to say a special thank you to all those who have worked diligently on the drafting of this bill. And I certainly am proud to be bringing this, to bring some resolution to what has been a long-standing bone of contention here in Cayman. I certainly commend this bill to this Honourable House, Madam Speaker, and I trust members can see it fit to support the bill.
Does any other member wish to speak? Recognize the member from Northside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me start off by thanking the Minister and the government for bringing the bill. But, Madam Speaker, I think the bill falls short of some of the things that I would like to see in the bill, and I have filed an amendment to try and achieve some of that. But, Madam Speaker, as the minister said in moving the bill, this has been a vexing and contentious thing for a long time. I started this thing with the concerned citizens in the 80s. That was when we put up the swim signs and all that you see one or two left around now. At one point, they were all over the island, and I think there's just a few left along West Bay Road now, because most of the people in North Side who bought land took up the signs and threw them away. And the governments have never seen fit to put the signs back. Rather, like the no-dive zones created in 1986, and up till this day, the government can't find, and not just this government, but all governments since that, we put up the signs in 1986, and once they were destroyed, I have been unable to get any government to replace them. And Madam Speaker, as the minister said, there are two kinds of these right-of-ways that we have to be concerned about. One is the one that my grandfather earned the prescriptive right to use, and people of his generation. And, Madam Speaker, as I read the prescriptive law, once that prescriptive right has been earned, the fact that somebody blocked it and no government has believed it has had the authority to unblock it does not remove the prescriptive right. Because in my constituency, Madam Speaker, there are several that my constituents have been prohibited from using over a long period of time because landowners have erected fences, landowners have ran people off the property and told the people that they can't use these beach accesses. The other one is the 6-foot right-of-way that is prescribed under the Development and Planning Law for developments over 200 feet. But, Madam Speaker, no. Yeah. There are a couple of places that we might have 12 because we combined them. But we have earned the prescriptive right for many of those today because they have been used for more than 20 years. Graded. But they can block them, right? And as far as some of these landowners believe, they have taken them away. Because, Madam Speaker, this whole thing about, because there is really no such thing in Cayman as a public beach, other than those that are currently where the land, upland of the line of vegetation is owned by government. All beaches, the prescriptive right has been earned to use them. And that prescriptive right was at the line of vegetation. It was changed in this parliament in 1985 or 86 for planning purposes and measurement purposes to be high water mark. And many of the people who have bought beach land since that time, including Caymanians who come to my community and buy it, believe that that thing removed the prescriptive right for the beach, and all the people have the right to do is to walk along that little 1 foot wide stretch of land between low water and high water. Because most places in my constituents are much wider than that, between high water and low water mark. And they have, in instances, accosted people for walking. I know cases where people in my constituency go and catch sprats out the water, and because they dump them out of the cast net on the higher part of the beach so that they can't get back to the sea, the landowner come down, take the sprats and throw them in the sea and tell them they're his because that's his land. One of the worst cases I heard was about, it might have been 6 months ago now, one of my constituencies anchored his boat. He said 10, 15, 20 feet from shore to clean his fish while putting out his little sideline to see if he could catch a mutton snapper. And the people come out and tell him he can't clean fish in their water. So, Madam Speaker, there's an urgency in the government doing something to clearly identify these access, but also to preserve that prescriptive right to use the beach above a high water mark. Because I've had 3 people come to me and claim that they have been run off in front of the Kimpton Hotel by security guards, telling them they can't sit down on the beach, they can't go in the sea, and that they can't stand up on the beach. Now, and the kind of people that came to me with that complaint, there was no frivolous people. Because if we walk along 7 Mile Beach now, we will see where planning has allowed people to erect structures within that section of the beach for which we have a prescriptive right to use. And, Madam Speaker, I believe we may have come to the stage where it might be necessary for government through lands and survey to go back to the old maps and put down some kind of datum line, particularly along 7 Mile Beach, which clearly identifies that any beach below that datum line is what the people have a prescriptive right to use. Because as long these people keep pushing the envelope, and the more we allow them to get away with it, the more they're going to take. Now, Madam Speaker, the amendment that the government is bringing is to provide for the statutory authority, department of government or agency, meaning the agencies that are established under the public lands law, to be able to take action on behalf of people who complain to them that they're being run off the property. But, Madam Speaker, what happens when that commission decides it doesn't want to take action? Because it says here, a person can still take the action, but they have to go to Grand Court. I have filed an amendment to ask that it be dealt with at summary court for the same reason that the minister proposed in the cost of a person going to Grand Court can be high. And I believe, and I have been advised, that this could be something that the summary court could deal with. And for the instances where the government department, and that is not so far-reaching, Madam Speaker, to believe that this government department will not take up the case. Because in some instances, they may be being asked to override another department of which they are members of, i.e. the Central Planning Authority and the Planning Department. So, Madam Speaker, I have asked that it be dealt with at summary court. And I've also filed an amendment, Madam Speaker, to provide punitive measures if a person blocks the road, blocks the beach access, or in any other way inhibits a person from going there. And I propose to do that by adding a new section 11 to the prescriptive law. Because, Madam Speaker, if it's simply that all what's going to happen is somebody decides to put up a fence across this prescriptive right-of-way, and the person complains to this government entity. The government entity takes the case to court and establishes that it is a right-of-way, but there's no punitive damages. The person doesn't have to pay a fine, they don't have to go to jail or anything else. The person is likely to go back and block it again, because all it has cost him is his defense in court, and if you don't show up there, there's no defense for him to pay. And most of these people are off the island most of the time. So I believe that there should be some fine, and I propose $500, or actually $5,000, or imprisonment for 6 months, and shall, in addition to such fine or imprisonment, pay a fine of $500 per day for every day after conviction that such impediment or encroachment continues to persist. Because, Madam Speaker, when the government goes out and surveys some of these, it is going to cost some of these landowners substantial sums of money to clear these right-of-ways. Because some of them have air conditioners, and I don't mean just one air conditioner, I mean 30 or 40. And other things in these right-of-ways. Some of them have expensive rock fences that they put up. So, Madam Speaker, I believe that we need to make some amendments to the prescription law. I support the government in what it is doing, but I also believe that we need to go further. And, Madam Speaker, some of these people in my constituency, that they have just decided that they can commandeer the beach access. They can park their truck and their trailer with the kayaks across it for hours. 5 years. I've been trying to get something done about some of this stuff. Right? And can't get nothing done. And they tell when they go there, if one of my constituents' vehicle is parked anywhere near where they can't get their trailer in with their kayaks, they harass the people. But they can pick on the wrong one night, you know. They can pick on the wrong one night. Well, Madam Speaker, I'm not encouraging my constituencies to take matters of law in their own hands or to be violent. They really don't have too much fear of the police, but they don't come. I would love to see the police. I've tried to get the police to go and stop these people. There's a big sign up on Cayman Beach saying no commercial activity. The man tell the police that's by the dock, that don't apply to the dock. And the police say, well, you know, Mr. Miller, if it applied to more than the dock, the sign might be at the entrance. Any excuse not to enforce the law. But if it was one of my north side constituents doing it, if one of them go down there tomorrow and decide they can put up a jug stand, and the people at the Cayman complain that the scent of the jug smoke is coming over there, trust me, they can close them down. And Madam Speaker, I know that and part of the report that the minister referred to, I think that my constituency had some of the right-of-ways identified, but there are more that needs to be identified. And I hope that they are not going to finalize the document and the report as to where these beach accesses, particularly those owned by prescriptive way right-of-ways, are in my district without consulting me or the Northside District Council. And if they had come up and talked to anybody, I would have got a report. So I don't believe that they have been to my district as yet. There's still time, because a couple of days left to go to the end of the month. So I'm expecting that they will consult before they finalize the document. Because, Madam Speaker, as recent as last week, when the government did the Christmas cleanup, one of the things that they told me they were going to do was clean out the beach access and stuff. I got them to clean up a piece of property on the Old Robin Road, what most of the people know is, but it is Old Robin Road because they haven't got to the Queens Highway yet. That used to be public land, and it used to be a campsite for the Scouts. The Scouts had a building on the land. Nothing wrong with the building. Nice little house, porch. They had a well with running water. The man that bought the piece of land next door went to the chief officer in government and told him that the house needed to tear down. The chief officer gave him permission to tear the house down, but didn't even go and look at it. And the man that tore it down took it to West Bay and built the house. Because there was nothing wrong with it, good 2x6 in pressure treated wood. Now he has taken over that whole government thing. You talk about the Department of Environment and how they do things and what they don't do, what they don't do. He dredged the black grass out in front, the public beach. No permission. It was reported to them, they did nothing about it. I got the people to clean it. I don't know his name. Don't want to know. He now want to eat. I can guarantee that. So I got the people in the Christmas cleanup to clean it out. The Parks and Recreation Unit put a table there by the beach for people to use and put up a sign. The man take the table and the garbage container and put it out by the road. I called them, I said, listen, this man can't move around government property like this. They went there and basically the man verbally assaulted them. They put the table back, he moved it back. He uses the beach as his own, it's his backyard. And if anybody goes there, he tries to run them off with it. And nobody seems to be able to do anything. I understand the Parks and Recreation Unit now because he complained to somebody in government is being harassed because they put up the sign without planning permission. Because rather than put him in his place, we prefer to abuse our own. Who's trying to help our people? Because stop making these people come here and decide what's good for us. It's going to get ugly, Madam Speaker. It's going to get ugly. But we sit back and do nothing. And it is time to act on this stuff. Because, Madam Speaker, they are being narrowed down in my constituents, if not daily, monthly and yearly. Because people are coming here, buying land, nobody in the real estate fields tells them that they don't own the beach. The legal people who do the documents for them don't tell them they don't own the beach. And they buy the land except believing that they own the beach. They put up docks. No way for the people to get across the docks. If the people walk into their yard to get around the dock, then they want to arrest them for trespassing. When it used to be a time, Madam Speaker, anytime you built a dock across that prescriptive beach, you had to provide a staircase on either side of it for the public to walk. But these modern day people that we have given these permissions, I don't know whether they don't know their culture, they don't know their history, or they just don't want to know. But they give them permission to do this stuff, and we must just accept it. It is time to do something constructive about it. And I will give the government credit that they have brought an amendment to the prescription law, but in my view, it needs to go further. And I don't see any provisions being made in the public lands law of how these right-of-ways is going to be registered. Because whether they're going to be registered as government-owned property with that caveat that they have on the National Trust law, not indefeasible, I don't remember the word they use, but you can't change it anyway. And you can't move nothing off it. Because if they're simply just going to be registered as government land, the risk in that is that somebody can unregister it. So however we register this, we have to make sure there's a lock and key. And Madam Speaker, I will give the developers this much, that if the 6 foot right away or the prescribed beach access falls within their parcel of land in a way that may inhibit or impede the maximum development of that particular parcel of land, I have no problem of moving it to the side of the property, as long as it's not 2 miles away, right? But if we keep it on the same parcel, I don't have a difficulty with that. But we need to do it now, and we need to get them surveyed, we need to get them registered, we need to fence them off, and we need to be able to have the ways of maintaining them as a clear path to the beach, and it needs to be a sign. And I think the swim signs were designed very good. And most people, most Caymanians know what that means, a public access. But more has to be done, Madam Speaker, because this has been going on a long time. And the people's prescriptive rights are slowly but surely being eroded away. The minister will know that because they blocked the one now at the end of Sandpoint, because you will remember that when Sandpoint was originally built, by the Dices, you drove right to the sea, right by that grape tree. That's been fenced off now for what, 20 years? But if your boat break down up in there, the only place you can bring that back up, is to walk it around the Rum Point for that 6 foot way, or to walk it around Finger Key, all the way over to the 6 foot right away by the Gardens of the Guy. The one in Finger Key, there used to be a place there where you went to the beach too. All that been fenced off and rocked off. And Madam Speaker, the people in my constituency, and people from all over the island, have gotten used to using these things. But they respect the people property, most of them do. If they come there, they used it last week, but they come to this week, they see a fence, they respect the fence. And then they come to me and complain, well, how it block off, So, Madam Speaker, I hope the government will consider the amendment I have filed, because I believe it increases the people protection. I believe we bring it down to some court. If it get a situation where, for whatever reason, the body in government that has the authority decides it's not worth doing or they don't have time to do it, then the person can afford to take it to some court. Because, Madam Speaker, I see some people who are looking at me as if they don't believe that civil servants will refuse to do things. I can tell them it happens regular. Because when I try to get them to go up and enforce stuff, they don't show up. So, Madam Speaker, if we can come to some compromise over the amendment, I support the bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Recognize the member from East End.
You want this? I know, but that's like this prescriptive thing, man. You close it, close. You gave me the bill. It's my bill now.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You got an amendment there? You want to?
Madam Speaker, I rise to
An amendment here.
make a contribution to the amendment of the prescription law 1997. To permit statutory authority, Department of Government or agency charged with responsibility for ensuring access to public beaches to make an application under the law to have a dispute settled regarding access to public beach and for incidental and connected purposes. Madam Speaker, in the latter part of last year, I moved the motion in this honorable House asking government to consider bringing the necessary bills within 3 months to amend the registered land law and the prescription law in the necessary and appropriate manner so as to have full recognizance to and enforceability of any public rights of way which have been gained or given by way of prescription and or dedication pursuant to some legal process. And such legislative change shall include but not be limited to provisions for the determination and registration of all existing public beach areas and accesses thereto, and or access to the sea, and the necessary and appropriate provisions for the enforcement of the same by way of penal sanctions. Now, Madam Speaker, I don't know if this amending bill is in response to that. However, I don't see how any accompanying amendment to the registered land law, nor do I see any penal sanctions being proposed. Madam Speaker, we have, like the minister who is sponsoring this bill said, we have for many years argued, begged, and whatever else there was to do to get governments, successive governments, to do something about beach accesses that are prescribed by law as citizens having an indefeasible right. Madam Speaker, the prescription law gives any class of public the right to access beaches, and it's in an indefeasible right, cannot be taken away. Under no circumstance. Madam Speaker, and yes, Section 9 of the prescription law gives those class of people the right to, who has a dispute, to lodge a plaint in the Grand Court under the Judicature Law 1995 revision. Madam Speaker, what the government is doing here is merely extending that right of claim to allow government departments and statutory authority or agency designated by cabinet. I wonder which authority has been designated by cabinet to do such, or which authority will be designated by cabinet to carry out this job without it being enshrined in that authority's law. As far as I know, cabinet can only give general direction through the minister to an authority. So how are we now going to get over that? And maybe, Madam Speaker, the learned Attorney General will explain how that works, because I don't. Madam Speaker, like my colleague from North Side, I do not believe that this goes far enough, but more importantly, Madam Speaker, like he has said, where we're finding ourselves is that, and the minister mentioned this, it's too cost prohibitive for most people to make a claim through the Grand Court. Nevertheless, we have left it in. Why don't we put it to the summary court? I think that would be much easier, less costly for residents to pursue. Madam Speaker, the fact that we're adding a provision for the government to make that claim on behalf of the public does not mean that they are going to be done in an efficient and orderly manner. Madam Speaker, what we're going to find is we're going to have to become inundated with claims. And Madam Speaker, I must say, in my humble view, theoretically, that's the responsibility of an Attorney General of any country as it stands. If a complaint on behalf of the public is made, and we need to get away from this thing about being the principal legal advisor to cabinet and the legislative assembly only. We need, in many other countries, the only thing I see, especially our neighboring Caribbean countries, the Attorney General goes to court to defend the public. Madam Speaker, what we have done, in effect, is the country does not defend its people, and we say to them, you can go ahead and do it. We're going to make laws so that you can make claims on rights. We recently saw a certain sector of society claim rights, and the government weighed in on it. But all of a sudden, those who use those right-of-ways don't get the same privilege. What we do is change the law to allow one of the departments to claim for them. Now, it certainly is not a criminal case, or maybe the Attorney General can let us know if a dispute in this instance would be a criminal case. And if it is not, then certainly it would have to be the AG Chambers that act on behalf of that department. So no matter where he goes, that office goes, he or she, they're obligated to defend the people in these disputes. So in essence, what we're saying is that we're dumping it in the lap of the Attorney General, right at the doorsteps of the Attorney General's chambers. And if such is the case, then I say maybe there's no need to do it in this way, that you go through a department. Is it that we are trying to get them to do the legwork and then present it to the Attorney General chambers? I don't know how the process will work, but I certainly would like to think that the Attorney General will explain all that to us in his contribution to this very important matter in the interest, in the public interest. Madam Speaker, I do not know why we're making this amendment to read such. The Prescription Law 1997 revision is amended in Section 9 by deleting the word such use as disputed. Any person concerned in the dispute may lodge a complaint in the Grand Court under the Judicature Law 1995 revision, and the said law shall apply to the matter in dispute, and substituting the following words. Such use as is disputed. An application may be made to the Grand Court for the settlement of the dispute by a person concerned in the dispute, same thing as what was said, is being deleted. B, the statutory authority, department of government, or agency designated by cabinet by order, charged with responsibility for ensuring access to public beaches on behalf of the public or any class of the public. Now, Madam Speaker, there must be some understanding some designation, some responsibility for the care of beaches currently, such as the cemeteries, parks, and recreational unit. Or is it we are doing the public lands now, or the planning authority? Which one is it? Why aren't they named? In order that we have clear lines of understanding who the public can go to. Madam Speaker, you can't have a department that is designated by cabinet. Let's name the places in order that it is clearly communicated to the people who may have a dispute. What are they to do? Right now, they can't afford to go to the Grand Court. We are further compounding that by them having to call and find out who cabinet has designated. That certainly spells a more convoluted way for the class of people to defend their rights. Name the department or agency or statutory authority, whichever. Madam Speaker, I know that when I was a minister, we created the cemeteries, parks. That's been 12 years now, close to 12 years. Nowhere in the world you put it in law. Well, I've seen them listed here many times as to where they should, who has responsibility for what. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, that's not to say that I'm not supporting it. I want to change from Grand Court to Summary Court. Madam Speaker, I heard that Summary Court doesn't have. So what does the land adjudication law have? Madam Speaker, in 1971, did you think I wasn't prepared for that too? In 1971, because I've been hearing that kick around, the land adjudication law was made to settle the same very thing, disputes. And there was no judges in that, was no court in that. Absolutely a special law that set up a tribunal, and it wasn't judges. Absolutely, it wasn't a judge. And that's still in effect too. Its purpose is over. I don't see no sunset clause in it. You need to show it me. I wouldn't pay you for an advice. I know I would go jail on that one. Mean to pay him. Be dereliction of my civic duty. Madam Speaker, because I would be encouraging. Anyway, Madam Speaker, I want to come back briefly to this thing about designating civil servants to do these things. I heard the member from Northside said that sometimes they don't do it. Madam Speaker, in September sometime of last year, I wrote the minister telling him that a right-of-way was blocked up at Collier's off Queens Highway. Madam Speaker, on September the 12th, one David Fawcett wrote to the NRA and copied to might have been the director of planning, Vasquez, Rupert, Whiteman. Good morning, Paul. MLA McLean has written in to complain that persons unknown have blocked off vehicular access to one end of Spotter's Way with large boulders. And would the ministry please act immediately to ensure that such access is not restricted? Can this problem be investigated and remedied by NRA? That one, Paul Parchment, wrote internally on the 12th of September 2016. Can you create a drawing showing me this road and who owns the land around it? Is the road a public road? Madam Speaker, that was sent at 1:27 p.m. and at 2:36, just over an hour. Respond to Mr. Parchment. Good afternoon, Paul. As requested, please find attached a map that highlights Spotter's Way in East End. It is an unpaved public right-of-way, 12 feet wide in brackets. When it parallels the ocean but becomes a private, highlighted private right-of-way, 6 feet in bracket wide, when it connects Queens Highway on parcel 73A 26 REM1. Mr. Parchment sent that to me then on September the 27th. Morning, sir. Please see the attached map. Note Denny's comment about the 6-foot private right-of-way as it connects with Queen Highway. I responded on the 3rd of October to Mr. Parchment. Thank you for your email. Please explain the comment on there being a private right-of-way connecting Spotter's Way with Queens Highway. I would be most interested in knowing how you have determined that it is a private right-of-way. That is by way of instrument. You say that was October? I am yet to hear or see an instrument that made that right of way private. I don't know what has happened behind closed doors, Madam Speaker, or internally, but I certainly know that that road is still partially blocked. And the ministry has not yet responded. I wanted to go and move it recently, but remembered that this bill was coming here. And I stopped writing letters now. Maybe too little, too late, Madam Speaker. I understand all that. I've become too old for people to do this to me. No one has done anything. That's not unlike other things that is not done, that you request on behalf of your people that you represent. Madam Speaker, let's talk about the other side. If somebody thought I didn't have an interest in this thing called prescriptive right of way, I brought a motion on behalf of the people of this country, the people of East End in particular, and the country in general, to bring to the attention of government that the rights of the people were being eroded. The minister got up on this floor, Madam Speaker, and said that survey from 2003 grant survey was going to be comprehensively reviewed and extended to the entire country, because it was only done on West Bay Road and North Side at the time. And he made a commitment here that his ministry, Lands and Survey, whomever was doing it, would engage the member from Northside and I as the local knowledge in our constituencies. The minister's back here 6 months later and said the report is nearly finished. I hope he doesn't get up now after I say it and say that they still got to do East End. I hope not. No, I ain't holding him for it. I ain't holding him for it. Because he head spinning like a giggle there now, trying to find out where it went awry. Madam Speaker, I am yet to be contacted about the right-of-ways in East End. Not even to say, but you know what they contact me about? Selling land in East End. Every week they send email about that, letter about that. Couple little pieces of land government got up there. But I haven't received one about right-of-ways. An issue that is much more important than selling it a piece of land government has. Because government not feeding that land. but people are being deprived of their rights. Should I say their indefeasible rights? That we have the responsibility to ensure is guarded? Madam Speaker, I noticed during the December cleanup, they did a couple of clean some spaces down to the beach. Half of them are not even right-of-ways. Madam Speaker, there are right-of-ways in East End that extend parallel to the beach, to the sea, to the land, along the edge of the sea. I wonder if they have identified those without any local help from East End. I just wonder. There are right-of-ways within my constituency that only East Enders know. And Madam Speaker, mind you know, I will concede if the minister can get up here and say how many people in East End they contacted and if they went around with them to get a better understanding and identify these right-of-ways. Madam Speaker, I'll bet the butter off my bread they didn't do it, not like that. I'll bet that no one in East End was contacted. But the report is almost finished. 1 month time, it's got to be finished. 2 weeks? End of this month, yes. I would like to see what they got on it. I wonder if they them right-of-ways in the ear they put on it. The one that we got soon through here tonight too. Madam Speaker, let me just say on that same matter, the fact that the minister has his staff working on these right-of-ways, and I am sure every attempt will be, every system, whatever will be used to ensure they get as many as they can identified. That does not mean that some are not going to be missed. I want the government to know, and in particular, wherever they are registered, that does not mean there aren't others left outside there, based on that report, whatever that report is. Especially in the absence of local knowledge. Madam Speaker, I am like the member from Northside said. I don't have a problem if someone wants to develop their property, like the one that blocked that off up there. And I know they're coming for me this time, but them rocks got to be moved. I promise you that. But I needed to say it publicly that they hadn't done it. Madam Speaker, those right-of-ways need to remain open. I want to know how they're going to register them, who is going to maintain them. The minister said they're going to be registered. That's the next step. Who is going to maintain them? Is there a need to maintain them? If they have been identified and registered, does that mean that there will be no more need to have them have disputes? Because, Madam Speaker, it does not mean because they're registered that people are still not going to block them off. Now, that the only thing that will assist in the registration part of it is that when someone tries to do a development, it is represented on the map. And they have to maintain the setbacks therefrom. Madam Speaker, people are still going to block them off. Madam Speaker, and if we touch one, if we remove one, all others are in jeopardy because they're all interconnected. If we shut down one of those right-of-ways, that means the right-of-way along the beach, right around these 3 islands, are going to be in jeopardy. People are going to challenge it. We cannot afford to shut down one right-of-way from the main road to the beach because they're interconnected. And you put the whole beach into question. It isn't enough questions as it is. People are even stopping locals from fishing in front of their property from a boat. I know, Madam Speaker, we know the gentleman from West Bay who does bone fishing. That's his livelihood. I don't know his real name, but I know we call him by a nickname. Ronald E. Banks, yeah, Ronnie Banks. Madam Speaker, he was relating a story to me recently. He has one of the little flat boats for the flats boat, right? And he takes tourists out to do bone fishing. And all of us know how bone fishing is done. We see them mudding up there, and you push up, you use your spike to go your spreet. Many people will never know what that is. Your spreet to take you over to it and get on the other side of them, because if you use your motor, you're going to run them. We never did fishing for bone fish with motor on the boat. It was always in cat boats, eh? And he continues to employ that method of spreeting along the shore. And he told me recently he was over Cayman spreeting, and the owner came out and tried to run him away. He was probably 10, 12 feet away from the shore. And because this is a little flats boat, it's absolutely flat at the bottom, and it doesn't have a lot of rail, Madam free board, you know, and that's what it's for. Now, Madam Speaker, to think that someone would try to run you, and I gotta be careful, whilst you're on the Queen's bottom, and Cayman Compass got say that I insulted the Queen again. Madam Speaker, this thing has become a crisis. It is a serious matter. You know, and, you know, I think Ron was upset, but because he had clients, he kept his disgust down a little bit. Madam Speaker, it's not going to happen with everybody. And I say again, it is through ignorance. The people are ignorant to the facts. That's what I meant by that. The proprietors of these properties are ignorant to the fact. And I believe that the CETA or the condo association had done something that I found where they were trying to educate their owners that there are certain rights people have through those right-of-ways along the condos. The government needs to do something. And I'm not saying this government, Madam Speaker. I'm talking about the department, which is the deputy governor now. You thought you were getting me? He needs to instruct his staff somehow to educate the populace on these matters. By virtue of, we have the GIS, we have Radio Cayman, we have newspapers. It is important that we do not perpetuate the problem that we're having. Real estate agents need to be educated too, if they are not. When they are selling these properties, Madam Speaker, my good friend, in another instance, Madam Speaker, he was catching sprats. And you know we throw sprats way up on the beach because they're going to flip. And before they get in the sea, they die. It doesn't take them long to die. And he's running after the baited sprats. And when he turns around, they were kicking them out in the sea. They almost picked the wrong man. He rushed back with his net to tie it around the property owner neck and carry him out with all that laid on it. Madam Speaker, that's what is happening. And it really wasn't in the gentleman's property. It was up there on the beach. We need to be careful with it. Every resident of this country, every person that graced these shores, that is tourists and everybody, is entitled to that right, you know, Madam Speaker. You cannot stop it. And people are becoming incensed, they're becoming angry that they're losing their rights. And Madam Speaker, I know the learned Attorney General has said that, and the learned Premier has said that the summary court has no jurisdiction over this, no, to make binding declarations. Well, I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to try and make it easier for those who are aggrieved by this thing or in dispute with it, we need to make it easier because Caymanians, residents, are becoming frustrated. People are becoming frustrated. And in most instances, Madam Speaker, when we see the people who try to kick you off the beach, it invariably, it is those that are snowbirds, like they only come Cayman for like 3 months or out of the year or something. And they feel an entitlement to their property, rightly so. But it's the ignorance, they don't know. Why should we not go on a campaign to educate them? Yeah, Madam Speaker, I find it quite unreasonable that we have done very little, and I blame in this government alone. We have done very little to maintain the rights of people, to protect the rights of our citizens in this matter. I know what that West Bay group has fought tooth and nail favor other Caymanian, and I hope their fight results in something that we can be proud of, Madam Speaker. Yeah, Madam Speaker. Premier saying he thought that fight was over. No, boy, they got more grit than a lioness. I think they are mostly women. And that's not because they're from West Bay, Madam Speaker. Then I gotta invoke another debate. Madam Speaker, I support the government, but I want to see some kind of changes that can, some kind of carry forward, some kind of proposal, commitment, or something to educate the uninitiated in the rights of residents. Because, Madam Speaker, in most instances, I'll bet you we will find that the very people who run you off their beach go and use other beach accesses elsewhere in the country. And I want to hear from the government in the response if they're going to move those rocks up there, because I am getting ready to. And Madam Speaker, I have nothing against the proprietor, who I understand. I can't be nominated if I'm in jail. What a mistake that'll be. They really want me out of the way. You warning me? Okay, I shall take your warning and your sage advice and your legal advice. I'll wait until the 29th evening and run my campaign out of prison. Thank you, Mr. Premier, for such sage advice, such good legal advice. Madam Speaker, I want to hear what the government is doing about it. And if it's a private right-of-way, who is that private right-of-way for? Because that's the last thing I heard. How was it established? Because all my life in East End, I have walked that road. I built it over. I ran the bulldozer that built it. And all of a sudden now, It's a private right of way. The gentleman Hewitt of David Fawcett in the civil service, he had. So, Madam Speaker, I look forward to that. I want to hear from the minister. I would like to hear from the minister on those other matters when he responds. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I recognize Honorable Minister for Works.
Madam Speaker, you know, I really never cease to be amazed as I was saying, Madam Speaker, I never cease to be amazed why the member from East End, just because he knows I'll take it, uses me for a beating stick all the time. Every single time. He got me so that I don't feel it no more. And Madam Speaker, I want to, first of all, before I go through to deal with this, want him to understand this Spotters Bay issue. I don't mind him squarely pinning it on me. I am not a lawyer. I believe if someone takes the time to explain something to me, I can understand it. I believe I have the ability to process, assess, and I think more times than not, decide on the right course of action. The legal advice that I have tells me that there are certain rights which the government can invoke, and there are certain which have to go through a certain process. Sometimes you have options in which process you choose before you can reach either what one may call as a satisfactory ending to the situation or to achieve the objective that one hopes to achieve. I saw when he wrote to the ministry, he gave instructions to have the matter looked at and to do everything that had to be done to bring about the situation to its conclusion, to keep the member informed, and once the matter was resolved, to let me know. I don't know yet, so obviously the matter is not resolved, and that's what the member has said too, which is fine. But if the member is going to hold me responsible for the rocks, then he better go move on, because I only can do what I can do from where I sit. I do believe that they are working on the situation. It is not impossible, because I don't have nothing to hide from nobody, including him. He knows that. It is not impossible that somebody may have dropped the ball somewhere along the way. I don't know. But did it to me, But you still blame me. Hush your mouth, but you blame me.
Members, I know it's getting late, but let's please maintain the decorum of the House.
I'm so sorry, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I only want to get the matter cleared away because I'm not saying that the ball has been dropped. I'm simply saying that is possible. All the member had to do, we've been here for 2 weeks. All the member had to do was to say to me, Kurt, I haven't heard anything about this thing. Could you please find out for me? But I know how it is. I also know what time of day it is, so I understand. But all I'm saying is, don't make it sound like I was to do something and I didn't, because that is not the case. And a little funny when it comes to that. I don't mind the beating. I don't know how it sounded. That's not how it sounded. Oh. Madam Speaker, whose head? My head spinning? My head did not spin for a minute. You don't cause that to spin anymore. You beat on me too much. It don't have the ability to spin anymore. Madam Speaker, forgive me. That little banter is just what it is. So let me continue on. But I needed to get that cleared away. We'll find out what happened. We certainly don't want the member to do anything that's going to cause him any distress. And we will try to bring about the correct solution to that. But the point with that, because he keeps insisting about moving them, I just want to say with it, because the question is in the air, and I don't know the answer to that yet, is why I can't say what the conclusion should be. And that question is, if it is a private right-of-way, as it is said to be, how did it get to be that? I don't know the answer to that. And that's what we're endeavoring to find out. But nevertheless, Madam Speaker, that is a perfect example, because I'm sure you will find similar examples to that. That is a perfect example of the matters that need to be squared away once and for all. Second thing I want to speak about, Madam Speaker, I have known for a long time, and so has the member from East End. For that matter, the member from North Side. They know that everybody operates with a different style. So my style may be a little bit different from theirs. Doesn't mean we don't have the same objectives in mind. And let me explain what I mean by saying that. Both members spoke about nobody contacting them after I said what would happen in the House. I have changed absolutely nothing. What I said to the staff is, go and complete this exercise. And it's not limited to East End and or North Side. I said, go and complete this exercise on your own. As you all know, and I know, when you think the exercise is completed, there will be places that you have not caught. That's the term I use, caught. Meaning, you will have overlooked some places. When you finish that, so that you have those in front of you, that you're not starting from scratch, it will make life easier when you speak to each of the representatives from the various districts and say to them, can you show us what we don't have or what we haven't captured? And that will happen. But forgive me if I sounded like they were coming to start the process, because if I had known that, but I still believe that the way that I suggested is perhaps the easiest way to achieve the result, so that at least when they look at it, they will see what this exercise has meant for the Lands and Survey team. That's if no, but I'm not saying. All I'm saying is when you all see those, it might make your life easier to show what's not there. That's all I'm saying. So that will be done, and and I mean, Madam Speaker, let's just think about it. It really serves me or the Lands and Survey team absolutely no purpose, no advantage, no nothing, not to be inclusive in the process and to try to make it, when we say it's finished, to be as close to being finished as it can be. And that's really all that there is to that. So I trust that clears that matter up. And Madam Speaker, I know, I really have a lot. I know that a whole house slipped through the cracks not so long ago. I know that. And I can't argue with a member from East End about that. That is the truth. It was a big crack. You're right about that. Anyway, we got the crack fixed. That's all right. That's okay. It's, at least we got it squared away after a while. So, Madam Speaker, there are points which have been brought by those who have spoken. I want to just try to go through the issues the best to my memory. There seems to be, Madam Speaker, an issue which is it keeps hanging in the air, doesn't seem to get resolved in the minds of some people, including those good people that the member from East End mentioned, the concerned citizens. Madam Speaker, somewhere along the line, they arrive at the view that the Registrar of Lands has the ability to register these rights of way once the Registrar of Lands concludes it should be so. Right now, they are in disagreement with that Registrar of Lands, and I think there is some appeal that they want to happen. And it's all about the Registrar of Lands concluding, based on the legal advice, that she cannot do as it is now what they want her to do. Once we get the law changed, once we get the motion that we need to get going with regards to getting the court, that is the Grand Court, to make a binding declaration. Not everyone, but she can't register everyone, is what I'm saying. So let me just finish. So my point is, even if there is disagreement about how we get there, we all want to get to the same place. So therefore, if it takes this change of legislation to move the process forward to get it done, let's just do it. Let's not try to hold each other up unless. No, I'm not speaking personal. I'm just saying I'm reaching out to all of those because I want everybody to understand. And I say this without fear of contradiction. The member from East End and the member from Northside don't love the beach and catching sprats and catching fish from the shore no better than me, and don't want nobody to stop them from doing it. Let's get it straight. So this is much as for me as it is for everybody else in the world. But, Madam Speaker, getting back to the point, they are suggesting amendments. Those suggested amendments will be looked at to see how practical they are to be achieved. They have suggested about taking it to summary court. I think we've already established that that is not the most sensible way to approach it because, and I understand what they were saying would have been easier, but if the summary court doesn't have the ability to make binding declarations, we don't want to risk that either. Right. So, Madam Speaker, we can't solve all of those issues, me standing here. Want to make sure that we all have a clear understanding of exactly what we're talking about and where we're going with this thing. Why, Madam Speaker, why I was laughing when I started the wind-up is I've sat here for the last couple of days and every bill that I've brought, most what I've heard is we want to support the bill, but it's not enough. And Madam Speaker, as I have said before, if I was sitting over there, I would probably be singing the same song. So I'm not arguing with that. But what I'm saying is, let us appreciate the fact that some of these things have been left and left and left and left and left again. And finally, we're doing something now. We're not saying everything will be done in one heartbeat or 1 second. But this, and when we get to the very next bill, Madam Speaker, I think it won't solve everything else, but I think it'll paint the picture a little bit better when we speak to the public lands bill, which is, as I said, tantamount to companion legislation to the amendment to the register, to the prescriptive, to the prescription amendment bill. I just want to say, Madam Speaker, that the team will be looking between now and tomorrow at the proposed amendments. Because the way the amendments that are proposed by the member from Northside, we will need the legislative draft and assistance to compare what is there, what is proposed, to make sure, and I can assure the member that if it is the right thing to do, doesn't create any other confusion, doesn't conflict with any other type of legislation, I don't have a problem with anything like that. My main contention with this specific bill was we had limited time to get, I'm just telling it like it is, to get to this meeting and to make the 21-day deadline. This was the main objective. While there may be a few other things that could have been thought about, this was the main objective, and I did not want to miss the opportunity to get this done. So that's where we're at with this piece of amending legislation. And Madam Speaker, the last thing I just want to say, when it comes to committee stage amendments, I am not saying that sometimes it may not appear because of the volume of committee stage amendments, like something may not quite have been thought through. But what I can say about that is that there's a flip side to that coin, Madam Speaker. And the flip side to that coin is simply this: whether those committee stage amendments come from the government or whether those committee stage amendments come from those on the other side, or whether it's a combination of both, what it does prove is that as legislators, we're continually trying to think to make improvements. Not only that, even when you do stakeholder consultation, it never fails that on the 11th hour, or in the 11th hour, someone, somewhere, who had all the time in the world to look at it before, but suddenly realized this is it, decide to put their minds to look at it and say, oh my God, I hope they didn't, they haven't passed it yet. And then there's a frantic move to reach the right people, to show what someone believes is something that is an oversight or something of that nature and needs to be fixed. And if it's the right thing to do, Madam Speaker, then we should. So I'm not begging forgiveness and absolution for committee stage amendments. I'm only saying that that's part of the process. And let's accept, if we're going to make legislation better by dealing with these committee stage amendments before we go to third reading and passage of the legislation, then let us continue to do so. Madam Speaker, I commend this bill to this Honorable Legislative Assembly, and I trust that members will see it fit to support it. Thank you.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Prescription Amendment Bill 2017 be given a second reading. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. I believe the ayes have it. Accordingly, the Prescription Amendment Bill 2017 has been given a second reading.
The Public Lands Bill 2017.
Recognize Honourable Minister for Infrastructure.
Madam Speaker? Say what? Which two bills? Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of the Public Lands Bill 2017.
The bill has been duly moved. Does the Honourable Mover wish to speak thereto?
Now you can understand with me taking it from all sides why I don't expect it from him all the time. He can do better than that. Tell the truth. Oh. That don't mean it must make it harder for me. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before I speak in detail on the proposed legislation, that is the Public Lands Bill 2017, I'd just like to first give an overview of the government's broad objectives in this regard. Madam Speaker, as to why we found it critical to bring this for consideration of this Honorable House. This, I will repeat for the last time, is almost considered companion legislation to the Prescription Amendment Bill, which just received its second reading. Madam Speaker, the Cayman Islands government and its authorities, and by the way, Madam Speaker, as I mentioned the word authorities, I just remembered something that I forgot in speaking to the last bill when the question was asked about authorities. Authorities are not mentioned in that amending legislation as regards to an authority being the agency to look after all of these lands. It is mentioned in that amending legislation simply because some of what we consider crown lands are owned directly by authorities. So when matters concerning those parcels are dealt with, it would be dealt with directly by those authorities. That's all. So, I certainly don't want to start another debate on that, not on that one. Madam Speaker, the government and its authorities, government-owned companies, and associated entities manage in excess of 250 public sites comprising public parks, public beaches, launching ramp and jetty sites, cemeteries, craft market sites, sports facilities, and public buildings, and other miscellaneous publicly owned parcels of land. We have seen over the years the increased use of government properties by private businesses. In some instances, it is trading and or vending. In others, it's for storage and public display. To date, Madam Speaker, the only piece of legislation on the books which is relevant to this is the Towns and Communities Law 1995 revision. Madam Speaker, this is an exceptionally old law that speaks to antiquated ideals and procedures that make it difficult for government to effectively use this piece of legislation in this day and age. And after doing some careful research, Madam Speaker, the ministry felt that it was more prudent to bring a new law that addressed the concerns of government rather than try to revise the Towns and Communities Law. And I want to make note here, Madam Speaker, that we also intend to seek a revision of this older law, but that will come after this. Once we get this one up and running, then we will be able, in short order, to bring that one in line with this, rather than to have the two of them dangling on a string, contradicting each other. Having said that, Madam Speaker, it is also meant to regulate public rights of way, such as beach accesses, which we have seen and had a myriad of complaints of some of them being blocked, or simply of some entity carrying out some type of activity over it, and in instances, as we all know, or at least some of us here know, actually carrying on business on those sites. Madam Speaker, I have singled this out specifically from the areas mentioned above because the government recognizes the importance of this issue to Caymanians and residents alike, and we are intent on doing something sensible in the own words of the member from East End, something tangible about it. And Madam Speaker, the prescription law started the train rolling, and now the public lands bill, or the prescription amendment law started the train rolling, and now the public lands bill will continue that journey. While I've spoken to the amendments of the prescription law separately, one can start to see why the government has moved legislation which go hand in hand. You see, Madam Speaker, we saw this as an integrated, holistic approach, not just a piecemeal plan that would not have satisfied the needs of our people. Madam Speaker, just 1 second, please. Thank you. Madam Speaker, delving into the Public Lands Bill 2017, we see that it gives the government, in my view, the teeth to manage and regulate the use of lands by establishing a commission that will issue permits to vendors and companies trading on public land, but with the understanding that they must comply with criteria that gives the public confidence that its rights are also being protected. So, Madam Speaker, it is a balancing act every which way you turn. For example, we have a number of public jetties or docks which are usually alongside launching ramps in various advantageous locations throughout the districts. Several of them are currently being used by the dive industry to shuttle tourists to the many beautiful dive sites around Cayman. Madam Speaker, that's a good thing. But we also want to ensure that they all operate under the same rules. In other words, we don't want a situation where one company can stay docked for 3 hours while the other one only has 15 minutes. And likewise, when we think of all of that, we can't forget the small local fisherman must also be able to use it without fear of being chased off. So those are the things that we have to consider in creating the legislation to make it work as right as possible. Similarly, we all know of the vendor situation that has plagued the 7 Mile Beach. I believe in recent days, not weeks, but in recent days, Madam Speaker, in making attempts to try to address the situation, we now get objections from neighboring landowners when you're trying to make the situation better, and you say to yourself, you wonder what is right. If you leave it alone, they complain. When you try to fix it, they complain. So sometimes, Madam Speaker, it takes a real test of patience. Anyway, this issue has plagued us for years. It is not something that suddenly appeared in very recent times. I am certain that previous administrations have had the battle and have scratched their heads and have looked to try to find solutions which are meaningful and not just kicking the can down the road. Madam Speaker, truthfully, I have to say, even when the Caymanian Compass decides to write their editorial, I guess when they don't have anything else to talk about, we still are here to make the best attempt we can to fix this. And I hope that they are able to take on board the spirit that we're trying to create so that they, in their messages, can assist us with achieving the objectives that everybody, including them I know, want to achieve. Madam Speaker, as I said, it is a situation where we have to find a solution. And I believe, Madam Speaker, that this bill will allow for that specific situation, amongst others, to be properly regulated. I also believe, Madam Speaker, that the bill will also allow vendors to operate consistently under the same conditions and criteria. So, in so doing, raising the quality of the product and overall beach experience, no matter who uses the beach, whether it is our own locals and residents or whether it is tourists. Again, Madam Speaker, such as ideas and criteria such as first aid training, tourism training, and customer relations are basic measures that will serve them well in promoting the user experience. And to go hand in hand with this, Madam Speaker, we are also undertaking a renovation to the public beach. And it is that exact exercise that I just referred to, saying that even in doing that, we're getting objections from adjoining landowners. Madam Speaker, I know that while you were in the seat that I occupy now, I don't mean as Premier, I mean as the Minister, you had your hands full over a short period of time trying to come to grips with the same situation. Madam Speaker, I want to note that permission to use some of these public areas may come with a service fee. But we recognize that this cost should be relative to the use and the type of business that is operating on the land. For instance, there may be a charge to dive operators for the use of the piers, simply because this can assist government in maintaining the structures. But I what? Okay. And while there may be a minimum charge or even an exemption to vendors on the public beach, I used the business of the dive operators, Madam Speaker, because I believe that they would be able to pay a small fee much better than the single vendor who is operating on the 7 Mile beach. Madam Speaker, government's main objective is to enhance the quality of the product, not to penalize traders. Indeed, Madam Speaker, we want to see them prosper also. Now, Madam Speaker, I will take the time to simply speak to the legislation itself. Firstly, Madam Speaker, Clause 2. Part 1 provides the definitions for terms used in the proposed legislation. Of importance here is the definition of public land, which in this law means the following lands, whether or not the public has access to them. And when I read the definition, Madam Speaker, it'll be clear to all what I mean by whether or not the public has access to them. A, Crown land, whether owned solely by the Crown or jointly by the Crown and another party, and facilities on Crown land. B, land vested in statutory authorities or government companies and facilities on such land. C, the seabed and territorial waters of the islands. And D, wharfs, jetties, ramps, and docks owned by the Crown, but does not include areas of Crown land designated as protected areas under Section 7 of the National Conservation Law 2013 for so long as the designation is in force. Madam Speaker, I just conferred with the technical staff, and I thought I knew why, but I just wanted to make sure. The reason for the exception, which are the protected areas under Section 7 of the NCL, is simply because that law, the National Conservation Law of 2013, has its own rules under which those parcels are dealt with. It was important, Madam Speaker, to establish such a definition as we were cognizant of the National Conservation Law and areas that would be protected under that law and or under other agencies' control. Part 2 of the bill establishes the Commission and allows the Minister to provide policy direction on how government wishes to see public lands regulated. The Commission is made up of 5 individuals, or will be made up of 5 individuals. The Director of Lands and Survey or his designate will serve as chairman. The chairman of the Tourism Attraction Board or his or her designate. The Chief Officer of Tourism or his or her designate. And 2 other members appointed by Cabinet on the recommendation of the Minister, at least one of whom shall be a member of the public and one of whom shall have a background and knowledge of the island's heritage and culture. Madam Speaker, we thought it important to have such a composition for several reasons. First, it may be obvious that the Lands and Survey Department and the Ministry of Tourism play an important role in this arrangement. However, we also included the chairman of the Tourism Attraction Board for an added perspective on tourism, but also because some of the lands that could utilize the protection of this law are jointly owned between government and the Tourism Attraction Board. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, having another member who has a background in heritage and culture, we consider to be a very important prerequisite, and was a result of consultation with parties such as the concerned citizens and the Ministry of Culture to ensure that knowledge of our community was recognized and provided to the Commission. They didn't ask me either. Clause 11, Madam Speaker, provides for the appointment of a chief inspector. Additional inspectors and a secretary to the Commission, and for the supervision of the secretary and inspectors by the chief inspector. The clause empowers inspectors to enforce the law and the regulations and requires them to present identification on request when doing so. Madam Speaker, it is important to understand that there will be I want to say it again, there will be a chief inspector, additional inspectors, and a secretary to the Commission. And these inspectors will be empowered to enforce the law and the regs, and it also requires them to present identification on request when doing so. Madam Speaker, Clause 12 also provides for the designation of deputy inspectors by the chief officer of the ministry. The concept here is to allow for individuals currently delegated with responsibility for a particular land to be designated or deputized so as to enforce the law. For example, Madam Speaker, should an authority opt to have their lands included within the jurisdiction of this law, then a suitable employee of that authority could be deputized to enforce the law for that land working under the Commission. This, we thought, would be an efficient and effective use of existing human resources. Part 3, Madam Speaker, regulates the use of public land, and Clause 14 enshrines the public right of access to and the use of public land without discrimination, and requires the Commission to protect that right. These are some of the areas, Madam Speaker, that I was referring to, which in the Public Lands Bill are very important to the amendment to the prescription law, which tells how all of these functions will work together. Madam Speaker, Clause 15 provides that a person who wishes to carry on a commercial activity on public land must apply to the Commission for a vendor's permit. The intent here is to create a mechanism that gives vendors permission to use specified public land to carry out commercial activity. Madam Speaker, this is in line with Section 18 of the Trade and Business Licensing Law, which stipulates that any business trading on public land disclose details on the location and nature of their business, along with permission for them to carry out such business. It states in the law, 18.1 says, any person carrying on a trade or business shall, unless excluded from the application of this law, apply to the board for the grant or renewal of a license in accordance with the respective categories of trade or business set out in Part B of Schedule 1. The board in this instance, Madam Speaker, is the Trade and Business Licensing Board. Subsection 2 says, an application pursuant to subsection 1 shall be accompanied by where the applicant will be carry on business in a public place, evidence of the approval of the relevant authority to carry on business in such a place. So, Madam Speaker, it's 1 then 2. Anyone who applies for a trade and business license and is using government property to operate from must be given a permit by the board to operate in that location, and that permit has to accompany their application in order for them to get a trade and business license. There's a reason for that. You don't want either of them trying to operate with just one and not the other. They can't get the second one without the first one. That's the whole purpose of the exercise. Well, let me put it to you this way, Madam Speaker. If they operate illegally, the inspectors, part of their job description will be regular visits to every one of these sites and taking, you see, when the member from Northside now makes a report and doesn't really get the results, I'm serious about this, doesn't really get the results that you think you should get now, because, again, kicking the can down the road, nobody wants to take responsibility for it. This cures that problem. But there are specific individuals who will be tasked to enforce such a job. Madam Speaker, in order for such a person or an entity to obtain a trade and business license, they must first get permission or authorization to use the land. Clause 21 of this section gives the Commission authority to suspend, cancel, or refuse to renew a vendor's permit on certain grounds. Madam Speaker, obviously this allows the government to manage these areas and ensure that a quality product is delivered. Part 4 of the bill speaks to enforcement and offenses. Clause 2 sets out the powers and immunities of inspectors in performing their duties under this law. Clause 23 provides for the search of premises by inspectors or deputy inspectors and the procedure for application for search warrants. The clause also provides that searches of persons must be carried out by enforcement officers of the same gender as the person. The subsequent clauses, Madam Speaker, speak to issues such as the seizure, disposal, and/or return of items, as well as court appearances and the penalties for offenses under this law. And Madam Speaker, let me say this, because I've heard members both this side and on the other side of the aisle speak to penal sanctions. So I would invite all members to look carefully at what is proposed in the bill. It is best effort from the technical team, from the various stakeholder meetings that were held, and also legal advice given from the draft person. Madam Speaker, Part 5 deals with miscellaneous issues such as providing the Commission with the authority to make regulations to the law. And that's going to be critically important, Madam Speaker. The Commission having the authority to make regulations, which those regulations will be approved by the Cabinet. But, Madam Speaker, this is something that is live. So regulations will perhaps periodically have to be amended and changed quite perhaps more regularly than the legislation itself, the primary legislation. Clause 39, Madam Speaker, empowers the Commission to exempt public lands regulated by a ministry, statutory authority, government company, or other entity from the regulations. Alternatively, the Commission would be empowered to enter into a service level agreement with the entity to jointly regulate the use of such public lands and the enforcement of the regulations thereon. This is of particular importance as we recognize, Madam Speaker, that there may be areas or lands that have specific requirements that this law cannot satisfy. For example, the Cayman Islands Airports Authority, Madam Speaker, may wish to include the land around the airport, such as the cricket grounds, within the jurisdiction of this law, thereby giving them better management over that area and who utilizes it, but may see it fit to opt out of the law for the apron, which has specific international criteria that regulate that. So we foresee, Madam Speaker, that a schedule will be published with lands that are not included in the jurisdiction of this law. Finally, Madam Speaker, Clause 40 requires the Commission to submit an annual report to the Minister and for the Minister to table the report before the Legislative Assembly, whilst Clause 41 protects the Commission from liability for negligence in respect of accidents, deaths, or injuries to persons on public land, except in certain circumstances. It also protects the Commission and the members of staff of the Commission from liability for anything done in the course of their duty, unless it was done negligently or in bad faith. So, as I mentioned when I was introducing the bill, I'm hopeful that honorable members and the public can begin to see the big picture, the importance of this and the other pending legislation. Madam Speaker, this government believes that these pieces of legislation will serve the people of the Cayman Islands well and will provide some greatly added measure of management and security to the public areas. You see, Madam Speaker, we have some committee stage amendments to the bill as well. And these were as a result of further last-minute discussions with stakeholders and thus spoken to as well to give clear understanding to this bill. Finally, Madam Speaker, I want to thank those who served on the steering committee, the government's legal drafting department, the many departments, agencies, and the public that provided such important feedback for the drafting of this bill. And so I certainly commend the bill to the honorable members of this legislative assembly, and I do trust that it will receive safe passage. Don't want him uncomfortable.
Does any other member wish to speak? The honorable member from Northside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Huh? No, it's okay, I don't need it. Madam Speaker, let me congratulate the Minister for bringing this badly needed bill. And let me get to that part later. But in keeping with the request of the Premier, as he begged us under the legal practice, but he bring the bill here, he expects us to help him correct it. So I can offer a few amendments that will assist him and will offer what I believe are some additional protections for my constituents, who I represent. Madam Speaker, the first thing in the bill that I would like to see amendment is the definition of Crown land. It says Crown land means the lands belonging to or held in trust for Her Majesty or acquired for use by the government. I wonder if we can put something in there that says belonging to the people of the Cayman Islands, in addition to being held in trust for Her Majesty, because I think we need to start putting down our markers that, okay, not a legal person, but you saw the drift, you know the drift. Well, then I think we need to re-register it from Crown land to Cayman-owned land. And, Madam Speaker, in Clause 5, under the Public Lands Commission, I would like to offer an amendment to Clause 5 to say the mandate of the Commission is to regulate the use of public land in the public interest. I would want to have after consultation. Yes. Yeah, long time ago. From the 14th. Because, Madam Speaker, the reason I want after consultation is because if this Public Land Commission is going to change the use, for instance, of Kiowa Public Beach, and allow vendors to be licensed there, I want the community of Northside to be consulted, because we do not support, and I want to repeat, Madam Speaker, we do not support the commercialization of Kiowa Public Beach. It must be left as it is for the people to use. Because, Madam Speaker, I don't want it to be like what has happened to the public beach along West Bay, where it is controlled by vendors and the general public can't get there, right? So I would want to put in there that there's some consultation with the district where the public land is located. And, Madam Speaker, the commission, the way it is structured, is the complete opposite to what is required by the Public Authorities Bill we just passed, that says it should be no more than 40% civil servants, because this one is exactly as proposed by the minister, 60% civil servants and 40% members of the public. And the amendment I have proposed to that, Madam Speaker, is that instead of having 2 other members, we have 6 additional members, 1 from each geographical district. because I think it is important that the districts feel that they are represented on this Public Lands Commission so that they can protect the interest of their local community. The way it's structured now, they're likely to be one Georgetown and one West Bay, and North Side and Eastern will be left out. Right? Because it's only two. It's only two. And I would like to see it one from each each geographical district, not electoral district. But that would be far too many. Very complicated life of bringing this as I mean. And, Madam Speaker, I would also suggest that if we increasing the membership of the commission, that it shouldn't be a simple majority of the members present to give them a quorum, because that means that the three civil servants could have a meeting all by themselves. And if the three of them there, 2 out of 3 would be a quorum. So I think we need to put a number in there, and if we accept the addition from each district, then the quorum should be 5 people. And 4B, it says, and this is dealing with people who have a pecuniary interest. B says, if so directed by the chairman, recuse himself or herself from participating in the commission's consideration of the matter. I think we need to delete if so directed by the chairman and simply insist that if somebody has a pecuniary interest, they recuse themselves from participating in the commission's deliberations. He shouldn't have to wait for the chairman to direct him to recuse themselves. And, Madam Speaker, it said fees shall be paid by members of the commission who are not public servants for their attendance at meetings of the commission as approved by cabinet. I don't know whether you might want to consider putting in the chief officer and the minister responsible there for that. What? You know, I'm not suggesting you go on the board. You're not setting the fee for the people to be paid. And under, because it would have to be done under the public management finance law. Keep with that. And in 11.2, again it says, in dealing with the appointment of inspectors and secretary of the commission, it says, under the direction of the chief officer and the chief inspector, the secretary shall record the proceedings of the meetings of the commission and assist the commission and chief inspector in the administration and enforcement of the law. I think it should be a requirement of the secretary to record the proceedings. I think you need to delete under the direction of the chief officer and the chief inspector. Because if the secretary should keep the minutes, he should not have to be directed to do so. What happens? Does that mean that the director and the chief inspector can direct him not to record the minutes? So again, I just think it needs to be the secretary shall record the minutes. And Madam Speaker, under enforcement of offenses, section clause 22.2E says, well, it says an inspector, deputy inspector, suspect on reasonable grounds that a person has committed or is committing an offense under this law, the inspector, deputy inspector may, using such force as may be necessary for the purpose. I just want to make sure that that caveat applies to stop and search under E, so that if you're going to stop and search somebody, it should be with some reasonable grounds of suspicion of activity. As long as the clause in the caveat covers it, I'm okay with it. But outside of that, I wouldn't want people to be stopping and searching people on public beaches for no reason or without cause. And Madam Speaker, exemptions and agreements, 39. And I heard what the minister said in terms of the government having the cabinet having the right to exempt certain areas from the application or all or any of these law and regulations. I would want to see more control of what kinds of property they could exempt. Because if cabinet can just exempt property carte blanche, then they could reduce the effectiveness of the law. Yeah, that even make it worse, because in principle, so once meeting alone can make the recommendation. Anyway, I believe that either in the regulations or in the law, we should put certain conditions under which that can be done. Yeah, okay. Because we're not making this law for this cabinet, you know. Okay. Madam Speaker, if we can come to some agreement on those kind of some of those changes, I'll be more happy to support the law, but I'll support the law anyway because I think it's really needed. And I think that it certainly is a move in the right direction, because the minister is correct that it is very frustrating, Madam Speaker, to know that what's going on is wrong. I mean, Sanford and Son destroyed the dock in Old Man Bay on commercial activity, and nobody could do anything about it. Nobody would do anything about it. No, man, that wasn't his dive boat, that was his tour boat. He should do one anyway. Because 7 years now, and planning still not got up illegal walls that he put up the down. And well, when we get to your development planning regulations to do with the volumetric stuff, I gotta make some suggestions on how we need to tighten some of that up, because the wall in Frankstown now is, I think this week will be exactly 1 year since me and the member for East End reported that. Planning came out, they said it was wrong. It is wrong in law. It goes out into the sea. It has to begin 50 feet from the sea. And this Easter's coming again, and people are going to have to walk in the water to use the dock and get on the campsite next door. And I have never understood why STOP in planning regulations has been laxer. The joke about that, Madam Speaker, is that in the Northside Primary School, the story goes that the teacher asked one of the students, what does STOP mean? He said laxer. So that's what it looks like it means in the planning regulations, because it takes forever. And I tell you, Sanford and Son, 7 years. The wall is crumbling into the street. Still has the blocks there with 2x4s, no cement, 2x4s down to the hole of them, to hold them vertical. And I can't get planning to do anything. They say they have gone to court, all kinds of things, but nothing is happening. So, Madam Speaker, once again, I congratulate the Minister for bringing the public land bill, and I look forward to its being implemented, but I want to put down the caveat that the information I have from the constituents of Northside, that we don't want any commercial activity on any of our public beaches, because it is going to restrict the use of the people in the community from using the beaches. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? Recognize the Honorable Minister for Works.
Madam Speaker, could I have just 2 or 3 minutes to confer with staff regarding points raised by the member from Northside?
You could do that, or you could thank them for their tacit support. You could do a preliminary statement at committee stage, but the choice is yours.
No, that's good, because in committee stage, then I can question him. I can't question him in his reply. Put him in committee stage, we tie him up. Be careful, Kurt.
Madam Speaker, I know your birthday is approaching, but you never cease to amaze me how wise you are beyond your years. And so, Madam Speaker, I want to thank all members who have not spoken and the one member who has spoken. And at the committee stage, when we get to this bill, I will deal with the issues as you rightly pointed out can be done. And at the same time, the wisdom in your statement extended beyond, because I could also deal with, at that time, any committee stage amendments that we're going to place based on his recommendations. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Public Lands Bill 2017 be given a second reading. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. The ayes have it. The Public Lands Bill 2017 has been given a second reading. Recognize Honourable Premier.
Madam Speaker, my inclination was to press on, but when the Honourable Minister of Planning looked at me and shook his head, I realized that he's weak, he is weary, he is worn. And so I won't press him any further, and I'll move the adjournment of this Honourable House until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. We have but one bill remaining to take through the second reading.
The question is that the House be adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, the House now stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.